The river did not loosen its grip easily. Its current clawed at her like an ancient beast unwilling to release prey, and with every step he took backward, the mud sucked at his boots as if trying to drag him under too. The woman's weight was unreal. She was tall, broad-shouldered, built like the old legends he had heard whispered around campfires, but it was not just her size that made the rescue feel impossible. It was the feeling that the river itself was testing him, asking whether one ordinary man truly had the right to interfere with fate. His arms trembled, muscles screaming, yet he refused to let go. Inch by inch, breath by breath, he pulled until finally the water loosened, and the river spat them both onto the stony bank. He collapsed beside her, chest heaving, lungs burning, the sound of rushing water still roaring in his ears, like a warning that this was not over. For several heartbeats, neither of them moved. The woman lay on her side, dark hair spread across the stones, her massive chest rising and falling slowly. He turned his head to look at her more closely, now that the danger had eased, and what he saw unsettled him even more than the river had. Her features were strong, unmistakably Apache, high cheekbones, weathered skin, a quiet dignity, even in unconsciousness. She looked like someone carved from the land itself, as if mountains and storms had shaped her rather than time. A thin line of blood traced from her temple down to her jaw, and only then did he realize she must have struck her head on the rocks. Without thinking, he shrugged off his coat, folded it, and gently slid it beneath her head, an act of care that felt strangely intimate given they were complete strangers. He had no idea how long he knelt there, watching, listening for her breath, glancing back at the river as if it might surge again to reclaim her. His thoughts raced. Why was she here alone? How had she fallen in? And why did it feel like rescuing her had shifted something deep inside him, like a door had been opened that could never again be closed? He told himself he should leave. Helping her this much was already dangerous enough. The territory was tense, misunderstandings common, and a lone rancher found with an unconscious Apache woman could easily be seen as an enemy rather than a savior. Yet his feet would not move. Some instinct stronger than fear rooted him to the ground. At last she stirred. A low groan escaped her lips, deep and rough like distant thunder. Her fingers twitched first, then her arm, and suddenly her eyes snapped open. They were dark, sharp, and immediately alert despite her injuries. In one swift motion she tried to sit up, pain flashing across her face as she hissed and reached for her head. He raised his hands instinctively, palms open, stepping back to show he meant no harm. He spoke slowly, carefully, choosing his words as if each one were a fragile bridge. He told her she had fallen into the river, that he had pulled her out, that she was safe for now. She stared at him, breathing hard, gaze flicking from his face to the river and back again, calculating, measuring. For a moment, he thought she might attack him. There was power in her, even injured, coiled beneath her skin like a restrained force of nature. But then her shoulders sagged slightly, and she looked down at her soaked clothing, at the blood on her fingers. Her jaw tightened, pride warring with reality, before she finally nodded once. It was not gratitude, not yet, but acknowledgement. She spoke then, her voice low and steady, carrying the cadence of someone used to being listened to. He did not understand all her words, but he understood enough. She knew who she was, and she knew where she stood. She was the daughter of a chief. The weight of that realization settled on him like a shadow. A chief's daughter. His simple act of mercy had just entangled him in something far larger than himself. He told her his name, pointing to his chest, hoping the gesture translated where words might fail. She watched him closely, then repeated it slowly, testing the sound. When she said her own name, it carried meaning he could feel, even if he could not fully grasp it. A name tied to strength, to lineage, to expectations. She tried to stand again, stubborn despite the obvious dizziness, and nearly collapsed, if not for his quick reflexes. Without thinking, he caught her, steadying her with one arm around her back. For a split second, they were close enough that he could feel her breath against his neck, heavy and warm, and the world seemed to hold its breath with them. She pulled away first, pride flaring, but she did not protest when he suggested moving away from the river. Together, awkwardly, Cautiously, they made their way to a sheltered rise where the ground was firmer. He built a small fire, hands moving on instinct, grateful for the familiarity of the task. As the flames caught, warmth spread, pushing back the cold that had settled into their bones. She sat across from him, silent now, watching him with an intensity that made him feel exposed, as if she could see every thought he tried to hide. He offered her water, then food, and after a brief hesitation, she accepted. Each small act seemed to chip away at the invisible wall between them. The calm did not last long. The sound came faint at first, hoofbeats carried on the wind, distant but unmistakable. She froze, eyes narrowing, listening. He followed her gaze to the tree line, heart beginning to pound. More hoofbeats joined the first, then voices, low and urgent. She rose to her feet despite his protest. Standing tall, regal even in her soaked, torn clothing, there was no fear in her posture now, only readiness. He realized then that whoever was coming, she was not a victim waiting to be saved. She was someone people searched for, someone whose absence had stirred the land itself into motion. The riders emerged from the trees like ghosts, moving fast, spreading out. Instinctively, at their center rode an older man, broad and imposing, his presence commanding even from a distance. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined not just by age, but by authority earned through years of leadership. The moment his eyes fell on the woman, his horse slowed, and something raw flashed across his stern features. Relief, fury, gratitude, all tangled together. He dismounted before the horse fully stopped and crossed the remaining distance on foot, his gaze never leaving her. When he reached her, he placed his forehead against hers, murmuring words that sounded like a prayer, like thanks offered to something greater than either of them. Only then did the older man turn his attention to the rancher. The air shifted instantly. The rider's hands hovered near weapons, eyes sharp, suspicious. The rancher felt every ounce of his vulnerability in that moment, standing alone before a chief and his warriors with no proof of his intentions beyond the woman's survival. The chief studied him in silence, a long, heavy silence that pressed down like the weight of the mountains. The river roared in the background, indifferent witness to whatever judgment would come next. The woman spoke then, her voice clear, carrying authority. She gestured toward the river, then to the man, recounting what had happened. The chief listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he closed his eyes briefly, as if committing the moment to memory. When he opened them again, they were fixed on the rancher with a gaze that felt like it could see into his soul. The rancher braced himself, unsure whether thanks or punishment awaited him. What he did not know, what he could not yet imagine, was that this moment, this choice to pull a stranger from a merciless river, had set something powerful into motion. The chief would not forget this debt, and the reward that would come because of it would change the course of his life forever. Morning, light spilled across the land as the chief's camp came alive, and the rancher stood uneasy among strangers who now watched him with new eyes. The chief approached slowly, carrying not gold or weapons, but honor. He spoke of a life debt, of courage shown without demand, and then offered a reward no man expected: protection, alliance, and a bond between worlds that were once divided. The daughter stood beside her father, tall and unbroken, her gaze steady on the man who had saved her. In that moment, the rancher understood the reward was not wealth, but destiny itself, and a future forever changed.